Belly mapping, a term we don't often hear from our OBGYNs or frankly even our midwives. But I believe if we want to have a natural and more optimal childbirth, it's really important to learn how to do. So in this video, I'm going to show you how. Belly mapping is essentially drawing on our bellies the position of our babies. And this is really important because we want to be sure our babies are in the most optimal position before we go into labor so that we have a shorter, easier time of it, right? Now, you want to do belly mapping when you're about 7 or 8 months pregnant because that's when baby really is big enough. They start to settle into kind of their home position or the position that they're going to favor as you're giving birth. So what you're going to need is a doll or some kind of stuffed animal with long arms and legs, and then some kind of non-toxic paint or marker that you can put onto your belly. Before we bust out the paint, let's talk a little bit about baby positions. Now, when you do belly mapping, I really recommend doing it right after you leave either a midwife appointment or an OBGYN because they're going to be talking about position and feeling where the baby's head is at, and you can use that as part of your drawing. So the first thing we want to know is whether our baby's head is down or up. Now, up is called breech, and this is a position that really is not optimal for natural childbirth. So we want to change that pronto, and there's things you can do, and we'll talk about that in another video. But most babies, fortunately, are head down. But let me just say, head down is not enough, okay? Because there's other presentations that can be really challenging. Okay, so now when your baby's head is down, they can either be anterior, which is like this, which means the back is facing outward, they're looking towards your spine, or it can be posterior, which means their back is kind of in line with your back. Posterior is going to make, for the most part, a more challenging birth. And the reason why is because the head is bigger when it's positioned this way, going through the birth canal. Also, if you think about it, the hardest part of the baby's head is that back part. That's going to be rubbing up against your spine. That has pain receptors. So this is where a lot of mamas get back labor. And let me just tell you, mamas, I had that with my first childbirth, and it is not fun. Okay, let's begin. You want to grab your marker or paint, and the first thing we're going to do is draw 4 quadrants on our belly. So this just kind of looks like a big cross. And don't worry, you don't have to be a fancy artist to do this. It's just a rough sketch. Next, we want to draw where our baby's head is. And that's why it's really important. If you do not know where your baby's head is at 7 or 8 months pregnant, go to your midwife, go to your OBGYN and confirm whether it's through ultrasound or palpation. Now, I know my baby's head is down. Thank you, God. So I'm going to put a little circle here for the baby's head. The next thing we want to determine is where is the baby's heart and back, okay? Now, a great way to determine this is by detecting the heartbeat. My midwife uses a fetal scope, which is very targeted. And the last time that I went, she felt the baby's heart somewhere around here. Okay, so that's where the baby's heart's going to be, which means this is generally where her back is positioned. Okay, so she's on this right side, coming up here, and then, of course, the back culminates with the butt. And this should be a very hard mass, okay? In fact, a lot of people get this confused with the head because it can be that hard, particularly if your baby is in the anterior position. So this is where the baby's butt is, and as you can see, it's this is south, this is north. They're going to be opposite, the head and the butt, okay? And then the legs are just going to be an extension of this. So they can go straight across like so. It can also sometimes go on a diagonal like this because baby can move around still. So that means generally I'm going to feel my movements up in here. Also up in here because the baby's knees also can make some movements, but this is going to be my biggest movements basically because the kicks are the hardest, okay? And again, sometimes down here. Now, I'm obviously not an artist. I kept this really basic and functional, but some people go all out. I love these. They're beautiful. I'm going to put a link in the video description below if you want to see more. Determining whether your baby is anterior or posterior can be a little bit tricky. But there are some clues, okay? The first thing would be if your baby is anterior, so my baby here is on the right side, and if he was or she was anterior, I would feel hardness here because it's that back that's facing out in that butt. So it's really going to be hard, not a lot of space or fluid feeling. I think my baby's actually posterior because mine isn't as hard. I feel more just liquid and just space there. The other thing would be on the movement of the feet, okay? So if your baby is more in a posterior position, the kicks are going to go outward. They're going to be pushing this way, where in anterior position, you might feel more up into your ribs on either side, depending on which way the baby's positioned. So that could be another clue. The last thing is the baby's hand movements. They're going to be subtler. They're going to be by the baby's head because they like to suck and play with their hands. If you have an anterior position, it might feel more inward, more crawling in up, where if it's in a posterior position, it's going to feel more crawling out to the skin. So those are just a couple clues. Again, it's not fail-proof, but at least can give you some things to think about. So there you have it, belly mapping 101. Now, if you want to learn how to either get your baby into a more optimal position or to keep your baby in that great position that they already are in, be sure to check out my next video where I'm going to show you exercises that will help you do just that. And one final note, I got most of this information from an awesome website called spinningbabies.com. So if you want to learn more about this belly mapping and positioning, be sure to check her site out. I'll have a link in the video description below.